Greetings fellow ukuleleans, Jeff Weinberger coming at you here with a new tutorial. Today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite music theory topics of all time, and that is the 4 minor chord. I use my handy dandy method of counting with our fingers, and I would say C is the 1 chord, D minor is the 2 chord, E minor is the 3 chord, F is the 4 chord, G is the 5 chord, etc. And we have 7 chords in any given major key. We have 7 different chords that all come from that scale. So if we're talking about the C major scale, you have 7 notes, 7 different notes, and 7 different chords. Each one built from a different degree of that major scale. What we're going to do is take that 4 chord that normally would be major. Normally in the key of C you have C major, you have D minor, you have E minor, you have F. Well, instead of just plain old F, we're going to turn F into F minor. And this is a very common trick. This is something that composers have done for centuries. It goes way, way back. You'll hear it in Chopin and a lot of the romantic piano composers of that time, of the late 1800s. But then when you started hearing it in pop music, it appears in certain Christmas songs and Beatles songs and rock songs from the 70s, and that's what we're going to focus on, is the rock songs. But I have 4 of them. I'll list them for you. In My Life by the Beatles, mid-60s. Space Oddity, that's David Bowie. That would have been, what, late 60s, early 70s. Probably early 70s if I'm remembering correctly. And then Young Turks by Rod Stewart. That was an 80s thing. And then Creep by Radiohead, a 90s thing. So you have different decades of the latter half of the 20th century, but each of those decades had tons of examples. There are hundreds of songs, most of which you probably know and that you've heard. No matter what age you are or when you were born, you know these songs. They have that 4 minor chord in them. So the first one that I played as my intro opening, that was Space Oddity by David Bowie. And this is the part that goes, "This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade." Or whatever the lyrics happen to be there, but lots of back and forth between ground control and Major Tom. And so with that, it has the 4 chord F, the normal 4 chord, which is always major, and then it transforms it into F minor before it goes back to C. So that F minor has this tremendous pull towards C, even a stronger pull than just an F major. F major to C is a nice strong pull, the F resolving to C. That's otherwise known as the Plagal Cadence, or the Amen Cadence. Comes from church music, comes from Methodist hymns. You have a lot of that. Amen at the end of a lot of hymns. And so that's pretty strong, but then you stick an F minor chord between those two. That's a very classic cadence, a very classic way to connect chords and get one chord to sound like it has a lot of tension that gets resolved. Very classic sound. You might recognize that sound from early movies too. Old movies from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, they use that sort of cadence a lot. But we're talking about rock music of the late 20th century, so we'll stick to that. But maybe in a separate video we'll go over movie themes and different things like that, different scores of movies. That would be kind of interesting. So let's learn the chords to that part of Space Oddity. You have C, which is the 1 chord. You have E7, which is the 3-7 chord, something we'll talk about in a separate video perhaps. But that 3-7 chord, which normally would have been E minor, but now it's E7, that pulls you very strongly toward A minor, which is the 6th chord. C, D, E, F, G, A, chord number 6. And then you have F, as we said was the 4 chord, transforms into the F minor, the 4 minor chord, and resolves to C. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And which way to go? They repeat that F off into another chord progression, another part of the song. So that's just beautiful. That F minor, C. Real nice choice by David Bowie to back up the lyrical content and the emotional impact that that song has. Those chords just really push it that much further. Really brilliant songwriters know how to use this stuff. And so there's one example in My Life by the Beatles, a great example. This is in the key of G now. So G is 1, A minor is 2, B minor is 3, C is 4, D is 5, E minor is 6.